The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
Biggest icon in wrestling.
Hey everyone, so I've made quite a lot of videos on the New World Order, but I wanted to put together a kind of reference guide for those wanting to know the members and different incarnations of the group. The nWo story in wrestling is extremely important, but it's also kinda messy, so I wanted to try and put together a cohesive, no-nonsense and straightforward video that documents every single member of the groundbreaking faction, the numerous incarnations of the group, and also mention the guys and girls who were associated with the nWo. We'll do this in chronological order, only slightly deviating when we need to talk about the introduction of a new splinter group or when something important happened that affected the group.
You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Scott Hall, formerly known as Razor Ramon, appeared on the May 27th, 1996 episode of Nitro unannounced. He got in the ring and declared war on WCW, leaving everyone confused yet also very excited. This promo right here was the genesis of the New World Order. You can bookmark this episode of Nitro as the night it all changed. Later on, Scott also promised a big surprise coming to Nitro in 2 weeks.
Bring what you got. The measuring stick just changed around here, buddy. You're looking at it.
The big surprise Scott talked about was none other than Kevin Nash, formerly known as Diesel in WWF. Nash appeared on the June 2nd, 1996 Nitro to confront WCW executive producer Eric Bischoff, and he said the measuring stick has changed in World Championship Wrestling. Scott Hall had challenged WCW to put together 3 guys to face Hall, Nash, and a mystery third man at Bash at the Beach 1996 in Daytona. WCW agreed, so fans tuned into the pay-per-view to see who would join these 2 outsiders in their quest to take over WCW.
You can call this the New World Order of Wrestling, brother.
After weeks of speculation, the third man gets revealed as Hulk Hogan. Hulk turns heel in the middle of the ring, and he goes on to say that he was the one who made wrestling what it is today. Hogan says this is the future of the business, the New World Order of Wrestling, brother. And this group that Hulk also called the New World Organization are going to take over the wrestling business and destroy everyone who tries to stop them. Hall, Nash, and Hogan would become the core of the group. They're considered the founding fathers of the New World Order, but Hollywood Hogan would also become known as the leader of the nWo.
Be back next week when the nWo returns one more time. Sit down, Bischoff.
Ted DiBiase was the first member of the nWo who wouldn't compete in the ring. In storyline, he financed the group while also providing managerial services. DiBiase didn't last too long in the group though, as he didn't really like being, in his words, Hulk Hogan's Virgil.
You think you're so bad? You're not bad. Each and every one of you are afraid.
The Giant joined the nWo on the September 2nd, 1996 episode of Nitro in a move that shocked wrestling fans at the time. Giant lost the WCW Championship to Hulk Hogan at Hog Wild in Sturgis just a month prior, but the nWo would now benefit from having the big man wearing the black and white colours. He would leave and rejoin the group a few times over the years.
Reach down. That right there is your cheap imitation.
Also known as fake Sting or bogus Sting, the nWo's version of the icon was used to trick fans and WCW that the real Sting had joined the nWo. At Fall Brawl 96, Team WCW were unsure if the real Sting had joined the New World Order, even when he promised them that he wasn't part of the group. The fake Sting was revealed as the nWo's mystery 4th member during the War Games match, and everyone learned where the real Sting stood when he came out to attack the bogus Sting during the Fall Brawl main event. Sting would then talk about how disappointed he was with his friends and WCW in general. He announced he was a free agent, and after that he became a dark and mysterious vigilante. The bogus Sting would stick around for a short while, but he had more success in Japan. We'll come back to that though in a moment.
nWo, as everybody knows, is for life, baby!
Named 6 because he was the 6th member of the NWO, not including manager and mouthpiece Ted DiBiase, Sean Waltman was able to compete in the WCW Cruiserweight division while still representing the NWO. He, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash would name themselves the Wolfpac, a kind of faction within the faction that only had members of the clique involved at first, and these three would benefit from the Freebird rule on occasion while defending the tag team championships.
I'm the daddy.
You are the daddy. You on the team?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Love you, brother.
Oh, yeah. For life, man.
When Vincent joined the New World Order, his first task was to slap Bischoff around a bit. Formerly known as Virgil in WWF, Vincent would become a long-lasting member of NWO, being more than happy to get in the ring and take bumps when the higher paid members didn't feel like doing so. He was seen as one of the weaker members of the group, and he managed other members of the NWO more so than actually wrestle. Again, this was so he could take bumps while other guys stayed protected.
One of the worst choices I've made, signing with Hulk, knowing how self-serving he is and that he's using me to hurt you.
Miss Elizabeth joined the group after signing a contract that she didn't pay close attention to. She was originally part of the group against her own will, and she was used by Hulk Hogan to get at Randy Savage. Her contract was ironclad, she could not leave the faction, and the only way she could ever be reunited with the Macho Man is if Randy joined the NWO.
Oh, we love you guys. This is more than WCW ever did for us.
Some may not count these guys, but they were associated with the group for 2 weeks. They hung out with the NWO on the September 30th episode of Nitro. Hogan then wanted the Nasty Boys to back him up the following week, and then they got kicked out on the 14th of October episode of Nitro. The Nasty Boys complained about their NWO contracts, so Hogan expelled Knobs and Sags from the group. In fairness, it's fine if you don't count these guys as members. I just thought they were worth mentioning.
I am going to take control here, and I'm going to bring Law and Order back to WCW.
Nick's lack of fair officiating was first called into question after Hog Wild back in August, but throughout September and October, it was made clear that Patrick was favouring not only heels, but also the New World Order. It was completely confirmed, though, at Halloween Havoc 1996. The NWO got themselves their very own corrupt referee, and Patrick would help the NWO any way he could to win matches. It may have started quite subtly, but it got progressively more obvious as time went on. He would end up leaving the group after Spring Stampede 1997.
Not only am I the highest ranking executive in the NWO, I'm the highest ranking executive at WCW.
Executive producer and WCW commentator Eric Bischoff joined the group after lying to everyone about his mission to find Roddy Piper in the run-up to Starrcade 96. Bischoff told fans he was searching for Piper and he even visited Piper's home, but none of this was true. Turns out Bischoff, in storyline, had actually been working with Hall and Nash behind the scenes going all the way back to June earlier that year. Eazy-E's role in the NWO was an important one. Having one of the top office guys in the group would give the New World Order incredible advantages, and he wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty when he needed to.
If Diamond Dallas Page was not married to Kimberly, I'm telling you, Buff would put his stuff all over her.
Marcus Bagwell left Scotty Riggs in the American Males tag team to join the New World Order on the November 25th, 1996 episode of Nitro. Calling himself Buff Bagwell, Marcus became one of the cockiest members of the New World Order, and that's really saying something considering some of the egos that were already in the faction. While never becoming a true main eventer in WCW, his association with the New World Order did elevate him up the cards.
He's handing it to Wall Street,
And Wall Street doesn't need the money!
Another one who's considered a weak member of the faction, Wall Street only stayed in the NWO for around 4 months. His removal wasn't a faction decision, so he remained anti-WCW following his departure.
You heard it here. You step in the ring with me, and I'll turn that ring into a hellhole.
The NWO got 3 new members on the 16th of December 1996. Big Bubba joined the faction when he turned on the Dungeon of Doom. Bubba would only last a few months, just like Wall Street. Next, Scott Norton joined the group moments after Big Bubba when a fight evolved into a full WCW NWO brawl to close out Nitro. And earlier in the show, Masahiro Chono from New Japan Pro Wrestling also revealed he was part of the NWO.
What you need to do is you need to take the bass out of your voice when you're talking about the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Macho Man Randy Savage joined the group at Super Brawl 7. The Macho Man helped Hollywood Hogan defeat Roddy Piper, and as a reward, he was presented with Miss Elizabeth the next night on Monday Nitro. Randy had an extremely turbulent time after joining the NWO. He became way more aggressive in the ring at first, and over time he would begin taking out his aggression on other members of the group. Randy's actions in early 1998 would serve as the genesis of the red and black NWO Wolfpac, a brand new NWO faction that were positioned as babyfaces.
It's the new world order, baby. That's what it's gonna be. Me and my good friend, Hollywood. It's for life.
Dennis Rodman joined the group on the 10th of March 1997, and he would also compete in the ring as part of the New World Order. He was mainly used to bring more eyeballs to WCW television shows and sell more pay-per-views. And indeed, he helped Bash at the Beach 1997 become a financial success when he teamed up with Hulk Hogan to take on the Giant and Lex Luger. He returned the following year to once again team up with Hollywood, only this time the NWO faced Diamond Dallas Page and Karl Malone.
He's yelling at Muda!
The Great Muta joined the NWO on the May 26th episode of Monday Nitro, surprising fans in attendance by misting Sonny Ono and getting presented with an NWO shirt by Masahiro Chono. Muta and Chono would leave Nitro as faction buddies, and Muta would continue to represent the NWO in New Japan Pro Wrestling while continuing to make appearances every now and then on WCW television. Let's stop right here and take a brief look at NWO Japan before carrying on. NWO Japan began with Masahiro Chono, Hiro Saito, and Tenzan. The Great Muta would join NWO Japan during a WCW Nitro broadcast as previously mentioned, and other stars from NJPW would join or associate themselves with the group over the years, including Tatsutoshi Goto, Michiyoshi Ohara, Big Titan, who's maybe better known as Rick Bogner or the fake Razor Ramon, Akira, and Satoshi Kojima. Members of the American NWO group would also travel to Japan during tours to help their NWO brethren, and some guys, mainly Scott Norton and NWO Sting, had better success in Japan than what they did back in the States. Other guys who joined NWO Japan for at least one tour included Buff Bagwell, Michael Wallstreet, Six, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Brian Adams. NWO Japan lasted all the way to January 2000.
Better have a good game plan because the Wolfpac's got my back. Arriba la raza!
Conan was one of the first cruiserweights to show up in WCW during the Nitro era, and soon enough he turned heel to join the Dungeon of Doom. When things didn't work out and when someone thankfully realised that he was a really bad fit for the Doomers, Conan was able to join the New World Order on the 14th of July 1997. Conan was one of the faction's better in-ring workers, and he stayed in the group long enough to become part of the NWO Wolfpac.
I am a part now of the greatest wrestling organization, the NWO.
Curt Hennig's involvement with the NWO shortly after his WCW debut was pretty interesting. He agreed to take Arn Anderson's spot in the Four Horsemen as the group's enforcer, but at Fall Brawl 1997 we all found out that the former Mr. Perfect was part of the NWO all along. Curt got a lot of television matches up until his knee injury in 1998, and he also got quite a few forgotten Nitro main event matches too.
It's gonna be Sheamus the First, a little bit rowdier and a whole lot worse.
Rick Rude caused a big old scene when he showed up on Nitro on the 17th of November 1997, mainly because he was also featured on a taped episode of Raw the very same night. Rude was legitimately upset with how Bret Hart was treated at Survivor Series 1997. He was also working in WWF without a contract, so Ravishing Rick was able to join the New World Order and voice his displeasure on live TV.
What's your name, kid?
I'm Louie Spicoli.
Hi, Louie. What do you want, Louie?
Louis became associated with the NWO on the January 15th, 1998 episode of Thunder. He would help Scott Hall cause problems for Larry Zbyszko, Scott's main rival at the time, but unfortunately we'll never know what plans WCW had for Louis. He passed away a month after joining the faction.
The New World Order is why you go to the arenas. The New World Order is what makes everybody a living at WCW.
Dusty Rhodes also joined the NWO through his association with Scott Hall. Dusty helped the bad guy during his match against Zbyszko at Sold Out 1998, and the commentators were absolutely livid because the American Dream was supposed to be a man who embodied the traditions of World Championship Wrestling. Dusty would serve as Scott Hall's manager, even following Scott when he decided to join different incarnations of the New World Order.
Get yourselves a nice warm cup of shut the hell up, okay? And recognize who's standing here talking right now.
Like Rick Rude, Bryan Adams left the WWF because he wasn't too happy with what happened to Bret Hart. On WCW television though, Adams helped the NWO attack the Hitman, and Adams revealed his NWO shirt immediately afterwards. Adams would get heavily featured among the mid-card ranks of the New World Order. He had plenty of TV matches, but he never moved up the cards.
I want all you freaks to know the Big Papa Pope's in town and he's ready to pound.
At Super Brawl 8, Scott Steiner turned his back on Brother Rick to join the NWO. He was a tag team champion at the time, but he had no issues handing the belts over to the Outsiders. Scott's character, his look, how he talked and how he carried himself completely changed overnight, and Scott would continue to evolve his character until he became Big Papa Pump. He and Buff Bagwell would get up to no good when Bagwell wasn't teaming up with Big Scott Norton.
Who's this in the ring?
Also known as the NWO Beefcake, NWO Booty Man, or the NWO Bag Carrier, Ed Leslie joined the NWO on February 23rd, 1998, and he took his rightful place as Hogan's main lackey. Ed Leslie was refused entry to the NWO all the way back at Hog Wild 1996, but he would become attached to Hogan's hip once again when he finally became a part of the New World Order.
You don't know what's going down. Wolfpac is running the show from now on.
So now would be a good time to talk about the Wolfpac in NWO Hollywood. Around this time, the issues between Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan were reaching a boiling point, and big sexy Kevin Nash decided to join forces with Macho after a few slip-ups in the ring by Hollywood. Savage officially announced that he was leaving the group to form a new NWO, and Kevin Nash said that this new NWO would be the real NWO. Savage and Nash also hinted that many guys within the current NWO were tired of Hogan, and a lot of the boys wanted new leadership. So over the next 2 months or so, we got to see who would join the red and black version of the NWO that would become known as the Wolfpac. Conan and Curt Hennig joined up. Scott Hall and Dusty Rhodes joined up for one night before turning their backs on Kevin Nash and siding with Hollywood Hogan. Miss Elizabeth wore the red and black colours, as did Rick Rude. And then the NWO Wolfpac got two very interesting new members. Lex Luger joined the group on May 25th, 1998, a guy who had fought with the original NWO throughout 1996 and 1997. And then Sting joined the group on the 1st of June 1998, a guy who went to war with the original group. Because the Wolfpac were so popular, the idea here was that Luger and Sting joining up would push them over the edge and make them the biggest babyface faction WCW had to offer. And it seems that opinions are mixed on Luger and Sting's involvement in hindsight, but nonetheless, it did work for a while and fans couldn't get enough of the red and black attack. On the flip side of this, we also had NWO Hollywood, the original black and white version featuring guys who stuck with Hogan, and also a few new additions. Bret Hart would become an associate member and recruiter for NWO Hollywood, helping some guys return to the original NWO and also being a mouthpiece for the faction, mainly on Thunder. You had new NWO members join up, such as Stevie Ray on August 24th, 1998, and Horace Hogan on October 26th. We also got Barry Windham becoming an associate member of the group when he began teaming up with Curt Hennig while Curt was still in the NWO, though Barry was never fully inducted into the group. The war between NWO Hollywood and NWO Wolfpac lasted until the end of the year, and then the next iteration of NWO came along. It's one that fans didn't really get behind, and that's NWO Elite. Before continuing on, I should mention that Curt Hennig, Rick Rude, Scott Hall, Dusty Rhodes, and Miss Elizabeth were all guys who, at one point or another, were part of the Wolfpac, but they jumped back to NWO Hollywood.
The biggest icon in wrestling.
nWo Elite was a reunification of the nWo that happened after the Finger Poke of Doom. We aren't going to talk about that right now, we're only concerned about how this affected members of the faction. Wolfpac leader Kevin Nash handed the world belt to Black and White leader Hollywood Hogan, and this new unified nWo Elite stable would feature these two, along with Scott Hall, Scott Steiner, Eric Bischoff, Buff Bagwell, Lex Luger, and Miss Elizabeth. The other guys of the nWo who were not part of the Elite were moved into their own kinda separate faction that fans and commentators would call the nWo B Team. The B Team would feature Stevie Ray, The Giant, Vincent, Scott Norton, Kurt Hennig, Brian Adams, and Horace Hogan. These guys would get featured on Thunder mainly, and while they were still part of the New World Order, they would also complain every now and then about their lower status within the group. While the B Team featured guys who were already part of nWo Hollywood, the Elite faction would get some interesting new members that shows us how the concept of nWo had been diluted. Disco Inferno became part of nWo Elite on January 4th, 1999, becoming another aide for Scott Hall just like Louis Piccoli. David Flair joined the Elite at Super Brawl 9 and he didn't even last a month. Along with David, we also got Tori Wilson joining the group and she left when Flair got the boot. Things had clearly started going downhill for the nWo and every nWo faction ceased to exist as 1999 continued on. But then the name was brought back in yet another attempt to revitalise the once prominent faction.
For life. The nWo rears its sexy head one more time.
nWo 2000 featured Bret Hart as a full-blown member and leader of the New World Order. Bret got some help from Scott Hall and Kevin Nash on the 20th of December 1999 episode of Nitro to defeat Bill Goldberg. Jeff Jarrett also came down to take out Roddy Piper. And these four would announce that the band was back together and this was a brand new nWo. The following week, Scott Steiner joined the group, and throughout January 2000, nWo 2000 also added the Harris brothers, Mark Johnson, who was another dodgy referee, Medeja, Tylene Buck, April Hunter, and Pamela Paulshock. These were the nWo girls. Jeff Jarrett would also lead the nWo 2000 faction when Bret Hart left WCW. nWo 2000 lasted for 4 months, and this iteration of the group has become nothing but a footnote on the overall legacy of the New World Order.
I'm going to inject the WWF with a lethal dose of poison.
Finally, we have the WWF version of the nWo. This one started with Hall, Nash and Hogan just like before, but when Hogan left the group, a few new members were brought in. Syxx returned to the group as X-Pac on the March 21st, 2002 episode of WWF SmackDown. He would stay until the bitter end. The Giant also rejoined as The Big Show on the April 22nd, 2002 episode of Monday Night Raw. A guy who once fought against the nWo ended up joining the faction on the 13th of May episode of Raw, and that man was Booker T. And the last person to ever officially join the New World Order was Shawn Michaels on June 3rd, 2002. Shawn was inactive at the time as a pro wrestler, yet he was still brought in as the new leader of the group. There's also the TNA version of the nWo, the band, but seeing as they weren't called the New World Order, then I don't think they count. And that was every member and every incarnation of the New World Order covered to the best of my ability anyway. Another thing I didn't include here was the Latino World Order and the Blue World Order because they weren't nothing to do with the core faction. The nWo were trailblazers, groundbreakers and trendsetters, but also they got diluted, they got repetitive, and at times they could be quite mundane. When I was putting this all together, I was very much reminded about how the group progressively got worse, and I don't even mean when they had 10 or 15 members, that I could still cope with, but when the Elite stuff happened, that's when I think it truly, really started to fall apart. Others would say it happened way before that, or they might point to the Wolfpac as the true end of the faction, but WCW were still getting good ratings during that time period, just not good enough to beat Raw's War like they once did in 1996 and 1997. Thanks for watching guys, and if there's anyone I left out or if I made a mistake anywhere, please let me know and I'll post a pinned comment with corrections. Thanks again for watching and take care.